Welcome to the NBW Ministries podcast, advancing the clear, accurate, and urgent gospel message. Your host, Dr. J.B. Hixson, is an author and pastor who provides commentary and insights on current events through the lens of Scripture. Dr. Hixson interacts with various experts on cultural, theological, and political issues while proclaiming God's Word to a world in desperate need of the truth. If you enjoy today's podcast, be sure to forward it to others. And now, here's your host, J.B. Hixson.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's J.B. and Morgan on this Friday, November 21st, 2025. Happy Friday, everyone. As usual, I am sitting here in my studio beneath the sky, nestled neatly beneath the snow-covered tall timbers of colorful Colorado. And Morgan is joining us remotely from his lair there in Kansas City. Morgan, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Glad to be here. It's a good topic today. I'm excited to jump in.
Yeah, I'm going to resist the temptation to announce the topic, and I'll let you do your intro. But we've got some front matter here before we get to all that. Let me make a couple of quick announcements here. First of all, we've got a special prophecy night to announce. Some of you may have heard about this, but Saturday night, December the 6th, we've got Lee Brainerd joining us for a live stream prophecy night. It's going to go about an hour and a half. He'll take 45 minutes to share a message. Then we'll do a live Q&A. It's hosted at our home church there, Plum Creek Chapel in the Denver area, but it is going to be live streamed. And so it's absolutely free. It's just an opportunity for us to kind of catch up with Lee and address some year-end things here at the end of 2025 that are prophetically significant, and it's just going to be a great night. So I hope you'll mark your calendars. You can get to it, of course, through the NBW Ministries app or through our website or through YouTube. Anytime we live stream, it's available in a number of different platforms, but the best place to find out about it is through the NBW Ministries app. So if you just go to the events tab and go to December, you'll notice that. So really looking forward to that. And then, of course, right after that, the next day we leave, and so does Lee, actually, to head to Dallas for the great Pre-Trib conference. It's the 34th annual conference there. And it'll be the fifth time that I've had the privilege of speaking. In addition to me, you've got Bill Koenig, Tom Hughes, Tim Moore, Tommy Ice, Andy Woods, Olivier Melnick. Max Lucado is one of the speakers at this conference. It's going to be amazing. It's 3 days, Monday through Wednesday, December 8th through the 10th at the DFW Sheraton there. Again, all the details at our website or on the NBW Ministries app. That one is not live streamed, and of course I'm just one of the keynote speakers. It's not something that we're putting on, but if you're in the Denver metro area, it is worth driving into. Tickets are still available for that one, and if you are going to be there, come see us. We'd love to see you. So that's a couple of highlights. Of course, as always, I'll be in the pulpit this Sunday at Plum Creek Chapel. We're done now with our Ecclesiastes series, although during the Bible study hour this week, I am going to sort of do one final wrap-up and Q&A and just informal discussion with our in-house audience there. That will be live-streamed about Ecclesiastes. But for the service at the 10 o'clock Mountain Time hour, I'll be live-streaming my message, which is on sort of a suffering and what to be grateful for even in the midst of suffering, sort of a Thanksgiving type message. I haven't completely put it together yet, but we do have the title and the text. And so looking forward to Sunday as always. Morgan, what have you got for us? Anything on your radar with social media?
Yeah, so things are still going very well in the social media world. Most of you probably know by now, but for those of you who are tuning in after a few weeks away or anything like that, or if you're new, we have a presence on Substack now, as well as YouTube. I mean, we've always had a bit of a presence on YouTube, but we've been uploading full podcast videos, as well as just the live streaming of the sermons and then the verses of the day and links. Now we're uploading full podcasts to YouTube in video format. That we're on Rumble as well. And then, of course, all the classic social media platforms. And then one thing I did want to mention is we've gotten a lot of requests for transcripts of some podcasts recently. I think the Charlie Kirk one had a lot of requests. I believe your podcast with L.A. Marzulli had a few as well. One thing I will say is that, of course, we are happy to provide you PDFs of any transcripts if you request them. But on Substack, I believe the app automatically provides a transcript on the website itself. So if you just follow us on Substack, you can subscribe for free, watch all of our weekly podcasts and daily podcasts for free. And then right there on the screen next to the like closed captions or the full screen, there should be an option for transcript, and then you can look through and pick out whatever snippets you would like to pick out for that. But yeah, things are going well.
Yeah, the transcript is pretty cool. Again, reach out to us by email, info@notbyworks.org, and we can get you any transcript, frankly. The more recent ones through Substack, and of course, as Morgan said, everything's available on Substack as well as all the other platforms. But those you can sort of self-serve and just get the transcript there. They're totally free. We're happy to send them to you if a transcript would be helpful. We know sometimes people have any number of reasons they might like a transcript. First of all, some people prefer to read. I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and he's like trying very hard to just sort of stay offline and fly below the radar, which I admire. And he's like, man, if I could read these podcasts, that would be great. And I try to explain to him, well, that's fine, but you're going to miss some of the videos and the clips and some of the things that we might show, or our guests sometimes will share their screen and show some things. But anyway, that's one reason people might want a transcript. Also, people like to use it for research. They watch the podcast, but they might want to refer to it or talk about it themselves in a Bible study or even sermon if they're a pastor. And so having the written transcript can help for copying and pasting content into a slide and things like that. So whatever the reason, reach out to us if you want a transcript. But yeah, be sure, as Morgan said, share. Share and like and all of those usual live or social media things. Like what's the other one? Like, I don't know.
Like, comment, subscribe, share.
There
If
you go.
you're old school, I believe you can even forward, because all of our Substack goes through email, so you can even forward our posts to people
Can
if
you
you want.
Xerox them or no?
I don't know what that is. I'm going to
Right.
be honest with you.
What about the old mimeograph? Can you mimeograph? Or if you print out a transcript, can you mimeograph it or no?
We're looking into that. We're looking into Carrier Pigeon and Pony Express as well, but no promises.
Yeah, we gave up the carrier pigeon a long time ago. They were so messy. It's like all the work that you have to do to clean up their cage. It's just not worth it. I mean, so
Speaking
plus
from
the
personal
food.
experience, I see.
What's that?
Speaking from personal experience, I
Yeah,
assume.
I mean, and plus the food just to feed them. I mean, we raised two teenage boys. I mean, we had to give up the pigeons when we had you guys. So.
So we were fed pigeon food? Is that what I'm hearing?
I am going to plead the fifth on that one. So,
All right.
all I can say is you didn't complain.
That's true. That's true.
So, no, good. All right. Hey, listen, let me do our verse for the day, and then Crossfire Friday. You never know what the subject's going to be. Of course, actually, you do if you subscribe to our email, because Brooke includes the upcoming podcasts for the week. By the way, if you don't subscribe to our email, please do. We have, it's so important. It's a great way that we communicate with you about all kinds of things, special last minute events that come up, obviously our daily videos, a glance ahead at what's coming, what we've done recently, a link to our online store, any specials that we're offering on the online store, our devotionals, quick links to our live stream on Sundays. It's great email that Brooke sends out about twice a week. So how do you sign up for it? Very simple. Just go to the website or app, go to the resources tab. You'll see newsletter. Click on that, and then you'll see a place to put in your email address, and you're subscribed. It's that simple. Obviously, like any e-list, you can unsubscribe at any time. Every email that goes out has an unsubscribe button at the bottom of it, but we don't get that too often because the people that subscribe to it enjoy getting it. So
I'll make it even easier. I'll say that for this today's podcast, every single platform it's on, there should be a link directly to the newsletter sign up underneath.
Oh, perfect. Good. Thank you for that. That's awesome. And by the way, I think that mentioning keeping it simple, on the homepage of our website, right there on the homepage, if you scroll down, you'll see a block that says, hey, sign up for our newsletter. So it's pretty easy. If you haven't done that, the only reason I'm bringing that up is I was talking to someone Sunday at Plum Creek, and for Plum Creek members, it's not uncommon for people to be on our Plum Creek Chapel list, which is, demonstrably smaller and mostly in-house church stuff, and not the NBW, and they just don't realize there's a separate NBW one, and that was the case with this person. And so I said, hey, don't forget, sign up for NBW. You're missing a lot of content. So those of you that get the email may know what's coming for today's podcast, but the rest of you stand by. Our verse for the day comes appropriately from John 8:44, where Jesus says this: "You are of your father the devil." He's speaking to the unbelieving Jewish leaders at this point. "You are of your father the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources. He is a liar and the father of it." And I thought of that verse today for a couple of reasons. First of all, it describes well the people that perpetrated the big lie and murder, both, that we're going to be talking about on today's program. And Jesus hits both of those there. The Luciferian elite that are serving at the behest of their father, Satan, to try to usher in a one-world political, religious, and economic system. They are both murderers and liars, just like their father, the devil. But I also thought of this because particularly as we get closer and closer to the end of the age, we are seeing an increase in deception. This, of course, was said by Jesus during his earthly ministry some 2,000 years ago. But here we are in 2025, and we're already, and we're seeing an incredible, increase in the amount of deception, precisely as the Apostle Paul would later say in 2 Timothy 3:13, that the deceptions are going to get worse and worse. So, appropriate verse for today, John 8:44. Satan was a murderer from the beginning, and he's a liar and the father of it. All right, Morgan, take it away.
Yeah. So, like you said, we were talking about the assassination of John F. Kennedy this Crossfire Friday. Of course, I believe this week is the 62nd anniversary. It was November 22nd, 1963. So it'll be
tomorrow.
Yeah, 62 years tomorrow when he was shot and killed at a... Now, you'll have to forgive me. I'm not 100% like an expert on this, but as to my understanding, he was in a parade in Dallas, and that's why he was in that car. Is that correct? It was a parade?
Well, he was there for a meeting. He wasn't there just for the parade, but they did a parade, which was not uncommon at that time, through Dealey Plaza. And yeah, that's when they took him out.
So I think, yeah, I mean, obviously it was one of the most historically significant events, particularly in American 20th century history. I mean, there had been presidents that had been shot and killed in office before, but it had not happened since, I want to say, McKinley in 1901. I think Garfield was another in the 1880s, and then, of course, Abraham Lincoln. But it had been, quite a long time, 62 years, I want to say, from McKinley to Kennedy. And he was a very, I think, noteworthy president. And so just obviously very historically significant event. And I think also what makes it so prevalent today is that it's one of the more commonly cited conspiracy theories. I think people like to rag on the official report a lot. I believe that's called the Warren Report. And I think it's one of the cornerstones of the conspiracy theory world. It's 9/11, it's a few others. But if you asked any conspiracy theorist, what's your conspiracy theory Mount Rushmore, I think they would put JFK up there for sure. So before we really dig into it, first I want to ask you, Dad, to the best of your ability, can you state what you believe the official story is when it comes to JFK's assassination? And then just a blanket, I mean, this might be redundant, but whether you buy into it or not, and we'll go into the specifics in a little bit. But as a starting point, let's just start with that.
Yeah, for sure. So, by the way, you said something there in your intro, and I know you do some research to try to come up with some talking points and questions. But did I hear you say that it was 62 years from McKinley to JFK?
I believe so. And now it's 62 years from JFK to now. So
I know. I mean, man, if I was, because the Luciferians loved, special dates and anniversaries and unique numbers and all kinds of stuff.
So Donald Trump should watch out tomorrow, is what we're saying?
I'm telling you, he better increase his security because they might try to make it a trifecta, three in a row,
And
63 years apart.
I want to say for the record, neither of us have any knowledge about anything that may or may not happen tomorrow. In case something crazy does happen, this is going to look very bad for us, but I promise we are just speculating and talking about numerology.
100%. And obviously, that would be horrific and tragic.
Yes, yes, yes.
Anytime a president is assassinated, regardless of what you may feel about that president, it's a horrific. I mean, these are real people with real families, and it's horrible. So, but
Absolutely.
yeah, thanks for sharing that. And while we're on the subject, I think it would be good to say, because it's a controversial topic, and I felt sort of the same way after I had my expose on TPUSA. Man, if you touch on subjects that the powers that be don't like, they've been known to suicide you. So I have no plans to kill myself. I'm extremely happy with my life and with the privilege of serving the Lord at NBW Ministries, and so if you hear a report that JB, was depressed and decided to take his own life, it is a lie. I promise you that. No plans to do that. I assume the same goes for you, Morgan.
Same here, same here.
All right. Okay, so the official narrative, it's kind of good. I could summarize it quickly, but let me just use the official lying page of Wikipedia, which whenever they want to spread official government conspiracy theories, that's where they immortalize it. Not that everything on Wikipedia is always wrong, but when it comes to official government stories, you can almost count on the fact that it's spin. But Wikipedia says JFK, the 35th president of the United States, was assassinated while riding in a presidential motorcade through Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas on November 22nd, 1963. Kennedy was in the vehicle with his wife Jackie. Texas Governor John Connally. Remind me, if we have time, I'll tell you my John Connally story. I'm going to make a note here. And Connally's wife Nellie, when he was fatally shot from the nearby Texas School Book Depository by Lee Harvey Oswald, a former U.S. Marine. The motorcade rushed to Parkland Memorial Hospital, where Kennedy was pronounced dead about 30 minutes after the shooting. Connally was also wounded in the attack but recovered. Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson was hastily, well, at least they admit that, hastily sworn in as a president 2 hours and 8 minutes later aboard Air Force One while the body was still warm. They didn't say that. That's my commentary. At Dallas Love Field. And then after the assassination, Oswald returned home. Actually, the official narrative is after the assassination, he stopped in the break room to have a Coke. But he went home, according to the official story, retrieved a pistol for unknown reasons, shot and killed a lone Dallas policeman, J.D. Tippit, shortly thereafter. And around 70 minutes after Kennedy and Connally were shot, Oswald was apprehended by the Dallas Police Department and charged under Texas state law with the murders of Kennedy and Tippit. And of course, 2 days later, on live television, as Oswald was moving through the basement of the Dallas police headquarters, he himself was fatally shot by Dallas nightclub operator Jack Ruby. So there you go. That's the gist of it right there.
Cool. And then I think we all can ascertain your opinion on the official narrative, but just for the record, do you buy that or no?
Well, first, can we ascertain what ascertain means? That's the big question.
How do you feel? Would you say that's a load of bunk, or would you say that's more or less accurate?
That's a great word, by the way. I'm going to have to dust it off and bring it back to my vocabulary. That's a load of bunk, no question about it. It's like many other false flag or government cover-ups. It's scientifically impossible. It just doesn't add up. There's just a number of flaws with it, some of which I'm sure we'll get to.
Yeah, sure. And then on a personal note, I mean, we can talk about like the facts and all that, but from like an emotional standpoint, from a cultural zeitgeist standpoint, shockingly, you were born after the event. You're not that old, but like, where was it was it culturally relevant still as you were growing up, or was it sort of just something you heard about in passing? What was your relationship with it kind of as you were growing up and into your adult life?
That's a great question. I don't remember during my, youth, early youth in the 70s, hearing much about it in terms of the mainstream. I think because of the way they hastily covered it up with the Warren Commission and then later with the House Select Committee on Assassinations, which was in the early 70s, as I recall. Don't quote me on that. Uh, I think it was sort of, they didn't talk about it a lot, same way they don't talk about 9/11 a lot, except on the anniversaries. But I will tell you that the impact of it in the rest of the 60s and then throughout the 70s was absolutely felt, because there were a lot of uprisings and a lot of the so-called hippie movement, where people and of course Vietnam, which by the way was intricately linked to what JFK, the assassination, one of the reasons they took him out. All of that sort of played into the zeitgeist, as you called it, of that era, so that people were angry. The young people particularly were angry. They looked to Kennedy as a hero because he was sort of avant-garde. Now, I mean, he clearly was controlled himself. His father, in connection with the mob, sort of helped get him elected, but he was by no means part of the Luciferian elite. He was not their choice. In other words, he wasn't as controlled by them as they would have liked, and so he was, marched to his own drum, and that's what they did not like. So, I think the impact of it continued, and certainly I remember those types of things. You had the Kent State massacre in 70, which I don't remember that in the day, but I remember the impact of it. By the way, my younger sister was born the very day of that those shootings at Kent State. So yeah, I didn't really get into the details of the JFK assassination and all the many lies related to it until I was an adult. And it was, by the way, before I woke up to the Luciferian conspiracy, which became the subject of much of my work for the last 20 years. I was already prone to conspiracy theories even before that, and this, as well as UFOs and other things, were part of my interest.
Nice. So for me, I feel like I have a, interesting position with JFK's assassination as far as its impact on my life, which is to say it never really has had an impact on my life. Like I was born well after it happened, late 90s. Um, and my understanding is that it was, very obviously a very significant historical event, like I said. So it was still very much culturally relevant, either in the foreground or the subtext kind of background of the culture of the 20th century, mid to late 20th century, throughout your formative years, which it sounds like you kind of confirmed there.
Mm-hmm.
And I would assume that his brother, was Robert F. Kennedy his brother?
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. His brother also getting assassinated did not help that story and that cultural impact go away. But like I said, as someone who was born late 90s, I feel like there have been so many massive things that have happened in my life that have really kind of shoved it down the pyramid of historical, cultural, relevant impact. And that's not to say that there weren't massive historical events in the mid to late 20th century, as I'm sure many of our audience and you can well say. But, just kind of off the top of my head, the Y2K scare, 9/11, the U.S. military's constant involvement in Middle East conflicts, the 2008 financial crisis, the first African American president getting elected, the staggering rise of mass shootings, in particular school shootings, every single election cycle involving Donald Trump, and the endless political scandals of his terms, Jeffrey Epstein, COVID, and you can say what you will about COVID's origins or lethality or the cures and solutions, but it's undeniable that the impact and the world's response to it was monumentally shifting, and the effects are still felt to this day. And on a personal note, particularly as someone with a background in live performance and theater, I think still very much the art space is not recovered to this day from COVID. And then more recently, we have the Russia-Ukraine war, the Israel-Palestine ongoing conflict, which of course dates back well before October 7th, 2023, but has really ramped up since then. And then, this year, I would say Charlie Kirk's assassination has been the biggest cultural thing. So just on and on the list goes, and it is honestly overwhelming for me. And I'm just certain I've left off dozens of events that many others my age or around my age would be extremely like high ranking. But there have been so many massive things that have just happened in the world, and with how quickly We are communicating. Like the world is a lot bigger now, but it feels a lot smaller because of the internet and social media and all that. So it just feels like more and more things. It's not that necessarily that they're happening more often, but we hear more things that happen more often. And so I just can't remember all of them. And with so much ongoing strife, with so many huge, more recent historical tragedies, I've just never felt much particular interest or care for JFK's assassination, regardless of what actually happened. So, can you tell me and tell some audience members who might feel similarly, why, with ongoing strife, with more recent historical tragedies, with everything that's going on in the world today, why should JFK's death be of any more concern to us than, say, Lincoln's, Garfield's, or McKinley's?
Wow, that by the way, that was a good summary, and a lot to unpack there. But to get right to the question, it absolutely matters because it is a made like 9/11 and like the COVID scam. It is a major, in your face, blatant lie that the government used in a variety of ways. Remember the Hegelian dialectic, which is what the Luciferian elite have been using since way before Hegel even gave it, a formal discussion and definition. It goes back to Machiavelli. The Hegelian dialectic, remember, is to never let a good crisis go to waste, or in some cases, to fabricate a crisis so that you can accomplish your goal by getting the people to willingly beg for it, right? And so this is what they did. It's never just a monolithic sort of, we need to move the ball from A to B, and this is how we're going to do it. It's, we need to accomplish a lot of things, and what can we do that will help us? And certainly that was the case with JFK. But anytime you have a major government cover up, and by the way, I'm 100% convinced that not everyone in the government was behind it. But I think very quickly afterwards, all of the high level people in the government became aware of it, and yet they were convinced to go along with the cover up for any number of reasons, which we can sort of talk about motivations there in a moment. But it's a major lie. I mean, the government lies all the time. We know that. Media lies all the time. We get that. Evil, bad guys lie all the time. The police lie. I mean, it's institutionally acceptable for the police to lie when they're dealing with suspects. That's why if you ever get arrested, the first thing you need to do is shut your mouth, don't say a word, and demand to speak to your lawyer, because they will lie, 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 lie. It's the devil's weapon, right? So it matters because so much of, what they're still trying to accomplish to usher in the New World Order and bring America in line with that, which means destroying our constitutional freedoms, goes back to that. They'll refer to it. The whole concept of lone wolf comes from that. The whole concept of conspiracy theory, that term was invented by the CIA as a direct result of the JFK truth movement, when people were demanding answers to the patently and blatantly obvious lies of the Warren Commission. So, yeah, it's if they would ever admit, which they won't. I mean, every president going back to Carter, frankly, and probably Ford before him, has promised to release all the JFK files, just like they promised to release all the UFO files. And then they get in there, and of course, nothing happens. They throw us a bone now and then, but they're usually heavily redacted. You never can see the facts. And of course, I've been studying this for a long, long time. I got a whole bookshelf full of top JFK researchers. I've even had one of them on my show years ago. And, every time they release a little bit of info, we get some nuggets here and there, which if you dig deep enough, you can sort of uncover some relevant facts. But the government would never come right out and announce on the White House lawn, hey, guess what? We lied to you about JFK. It really was a CIA LBJ operation, and we're sorry. That's not going to happen. So, yeah, that's why it still matters.
Okay. And, like I said a couple weeks ago on the 9/11 podcast, I'm certainly open to conspiracy theories. I'm not quite as conspiracy minded as you, I don't believe. I'm not sure that I would be hard pressed to find someone who was, which isn't necessarily a compliment or an insult. I just think that's you're fascinated by the search for the truth, which I applaud you for. But I certainly don't think, like you said, our government or our law enforcement agencies are these incorruptible monoliths of integrity and morality. I think just any basic understanding of human nature of the Bible tells you that nobody's perfect, that power corrupts, that there is a fallen, sinful nature in all of us that leads us to deception, that leads us to sin, that leads us to corruption. And without the Lord, I mean, even with the Lord, a lot of Christians can fall away and be full of sin, frankly. But without the Lord, you just have no hope to overcome your sin nature. So certainly a government full of human beings is capable of evil, is capable of lying, of deception, of corruption. So it's not that I don't think conspiracies happen. Of course they do. But when I look at conspiracy theories, I look at them kind of like a detective trying to crack a cold case, especially older conspiracy theories or things that happened when I was too young to remember. I look at what's the motive, who would gain from doing this, and why. So why did the Luciferian elite slash government slash CIA slash mafia, whoever we think did it, why did they kill JFK? Why not just blackmail him or find some other means to control him?
So, great question. Let me give some definitions here to start with. So, um, first of all, the Luciferian elite, which is their term for it. I did not coin that term. I can show you references to it 100 years ago. That is their term for the highest level of the conspiracy to take over the world. The people that report directly to Satan, pray to him, get their marching orders from him, all of that. The true Luciferians, right? So, of course, I've written 3 books about this in the latest series. I addressed it once in 2012 in a smaller book, but my trilogy on the Spirit of the Antichrist really breaks down who the Luciferian elite are and the role they're playing in this cosmic battle between God and Satan. But sometimes people use the phrase Luciferian elite or global elite synonymously with deep state, shadow government, unseen hand, hidden hand, things like that. And I always like to kind of nuance those and make sure people understand. Deep state is unique. The word, anyway, the concept, not necessarily, but the word is unique to America, and it refers generally to the Luciferian elites, American governmental agents that are working, to behind the scenes in government. So, in other words, Luciferian elite is bigger than the deep state. The ones directly responsible for the JFK assassination would be more aligned with the deep state. Clearly, the Luciferian elite were probably involved in it and maybe suggested it, or maybe, but it was uniquely an American conspiracy from its inception. And why did they do it? Well, that's kind of the problem with conspiracies. Remember, with any conspiracy, Morgan, there is the official government conspiracy. There is the official truth, which they labeled the conspiracy theories. But there's also, never forget, an official conspiracy theory, right? Which is also false, but they throw it out there to misdirect and to provide misinformation and so forth. So, for example, I think we talked about this when we did our 9/11 episode with Landry and you. The no planes theory is part of the official government conspiracy theory to discredit the 9/11 truth movement. But there is, the official narrative, there's the truth, but there's also an official misinformation, or what we call the official conspiracy theory that they put forth. So because of that, it's often difficult, and you see a lot of that going back to the JFK. A lot of books have been written about it by controlled assets who are just intentionally putting misdirection out there, misinformation out there. For example, the notion that the driver of the car is the one that shot Kennedy. That is not true. That's provably false. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there that seem to show him, and it's not true. The shots came from multiple shooters around the grassy knoll. It was triangulated, and we can get into that if we have time. But some of the reasons that I think do seem plausible, and again, it's not on us to, explain what happened. It's on the government to prove that their theory is true, and their theory is easily proven not to be true. But the whole issue of the Federal Reserve and him wanting to shut that down, the whole issue of not wanting to send troops to Vietnam, his firing of Alan Dulles, the CIA director, the Dulles brothers. We did a show on that with Mary Danielson some time ago. You can search for it. It was fascinating. Mary Danielson is an unbelievable researcher and one of our favorite guests because she gets it. And so anyway, you can search for the one on the Dulles brothers. But yeah, there were a number of reasons that you could cite, and a lot of the researchers have pointed to those. Any one of them makes sense to me, but clearly he was not playing the game the way they wanted him to, which is, by the way, the same thing they did to Reagan. So the Reagan assassination attempt, which happened on my birthday in 1980, or was it 81? 81, because he was elected in 80. So March 30th, 1981. And Wendy and I, your mom and I, have had the chance to go back to the actual site where he was assassinated at the Hilton there in D.C.
Where he was attempted to be assassinated.
I'm sorry, the assassination attempt occurred. Anyway, that was 3 months into his, or 2 months into his presidential first term, because they wanted to remind him who's the boss. So anyway, those were some of the reasons that served their purpose.
Yeah, and then so why do you think, like, was he a powerful enough figure or had powerful enough connections through his lineage that they just couldn't totally feel like they could control him? Like, you said they scared Reagan to kind of get him in line. Why not do something like that? Why not find some sort of blackmail or anything like that? He was too powerful and he had to go, you think?
Yeah, it's not about how powerful he was, although he was well connected. His father Joseph Kennedy was well connected with the mafia. And so, yeah, there was some infighting, as there always is among the elites. But it was more about getting LBJ in there. LBJ was absolutely horrific. He accomplished a ton for their purposes in America of helping bring down America. Remember, this happened only a few decades after the real top tier Luciferian elites in America decided we've got to get serious about bringing down this country, because in the early 1900s and late 1800s, America was still largely a bibliocentric Christian worldview type of nation. We had, of course, all the history of the Puritans and the Christians that came over, 150 years before the New Worlders that were sent over, the Freemasons and so forth that came over in the 1700s, 1770s. So the God's, fingerprints and God's blessing were on the founding of this country from the earliest days, and the Spirit of God was protecting through Christians this country. And, even though it's never been perfect, there's always been crime and evil. Obviously, the depravity of man is universal. But they decided that in order to accomplish their goal of ushering in the one world system, they've got to bring down America. So that's why they took over in the early 1900s media, academia, education, the textbook industry, all the publishing industry, media, medicine, big pharma. I mean, they took over just about every aspect of culture. And this occurred, not long after that. And it's, of course, they've come a long way since then in completely turning America on its head in terms of traditional family values, so much so that even the Republican Party is now championing LGBTQ and says it's okay to kill innocent preborn children in the womb under certain circumstances, those types of things. Whereas historically, the Republican Party was the controlled opposition, the traditional families, group. I can remember talking about that back in George H.W. Bush's term when Dan Quayle was vice president and media was just beginning to show some popular shows in mainstream television. This was before, internet and stuff like that was really popular, certainly before streaming and Netflix and all that. And so the big Murphy Brown controversy, and Dan Quayle said, oh, this is terrible for our country because it's advancing non-traditional family values. And he just took a beating for saying that. So we've come a lot further down the slippery slope since then. But it's not that he wasn't controllable. It's they wanted LBJ in there, and this was the way to do it.
Okay. And I don't know if we have time to get into this, but I kind of want to anyway, because you said something there that kind of was an epiphany to me. I hear you talk a lot about the Luciferian elites, plan to bring down America or decision like that they need to do that. And I've always like assumed when you're saying that you mean literally the country America will cease to exist. But do you think it's more of like they're bringing down the idea of America? Like it's so far removed from like its puritanical values and Christian ideals at this point? Like they've kind of just deconstructed even what it is to be America or American. Like, do you think that's more? Is that more what you're saying, or are you th saying literally the country will cease to exist as well in their plans?
No, no, the country won't cease to exist. They very much want this country, and that's why I've never thought that they're going to nuke this country, or even an EMP, if they chose to use that, is going to be very limited in certain areas. That could be part of their plan to bring us to our knees. But no, no, they definitely don't want to destroy this country or its infrastructure. They just want to destroy our constitutional republic so that we then come on board with the one world government, which may or may not happen before the rapture, by the way. We know the Antichrist is not going to take over until after the rapture, but we could be giving up our national sovereignty well before then if the Lord tarries. So, but you're right, it is sort of an ideological takeover for sure, but they're not trying to make us cease to exist.
Okay.
They want to bring us to our knees.
Okay. Sorry, just a little sidebar there. That's interesting. Now we can get into the nitty-gritty of the JFK assassination. This is your chance to shine, to go off. Feel free to list some of your biggest issues with the official narrative. And, you don't, of course, like you said, the burden of proof's not on you. You don't need to prove exactly what happened, but I'm interested to hear in your personal opinions what actually happened, because there's all sorts of theories out there, like you said. So tell me what's wrong with the official narrative, and then in your opinion, what do you think is the truth?
Yeah, the biggest smoking gun, no pun intended, is the magic bullet. So if anybody's ever seen Oliver Stone's JFK, it comes the closest to presenting what likely happened based on the evidence. Again, we didn't have all the benefit of this type of forensics and evidence. Certainly we didn't have the independent internet sleuths like we have today way back then. So it was much easier for them to cover stuff up. They just announce it and everybody believes it because, hey, it's the American government. They wouldn't lie to us, right? But nowadays, it's pretty easy with scientific forensics and other stuff to go back and see. So the government's theory is that it was one assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, and he was able to get off multiple shots in a time frame. I want to say it was 6 seconds, but don't quote me on that.
Somewhere between 6 and 8.3.
Okay, thank you. Right. In 6 to 8 seconds, one of which was the kill shot that managed to go through multiple bones and bounce off of things and eventually make a hard right degree turn, end up obliterating Kennedy's skull, and then magically be found on a stretcher in perfect condition without any markings on the bullet. That's their proof. And famously, the late senator, I'm pretty sure he is dead, Arlen Specter. If he's not, my apologies to him and his family, but I want to say Arlen Specter has passed away. But anyway, he was on the Warren Commission as a young man at the time, and he's the one that really championed and put forth that false narrative. It just doesn't make sense. It's been proven time and again that the rifle that Oswald allegedly used, you just cannot get off that many shots, certainly not, with that precision. But secondly, one of the big issues is the famous motion of the head. If he was shot from the direction that the government claims he was shot, his head goes in the wrong direction. And that's a big part of the JFK film by Oliver Stone. There are a lot of eyewitnesses that saw shooters on the grassy knoll. There are, which make more sense from where he was, from the impact of the bullet and the direction of his head movement. You've got a lot of times the cover up is proof of the crime. And that is certainly the case here. So you've got them violating all sorts of laws where they took the body forcibly from the Dallas police and threw it on a plane and took it back to D.C. where they performed the autopsy. That's a violation of the law. If a murder is committed in Texas, the autopsy is to be done in Texas. You've got Again, or LBJ within 2 hours being sworn in hastily. Uh, there was no need for that, right? That he could have gone back to D.C. and there's protocols in place. If somehow Russia were to attack us in that 2 hour time frame, we're well prepared for that. There's continuity of government programs, even though some of those have been tweaked and formalized even since then. But for some reason, he just wanted to do it. Yeah, there's the reports of doctors at the at the place. There's the missing brain. That's quite an interesting rabbit trail to go down. So there's just a lot of things that don't add up. Oswald, we now know, was a government informant. He was a patsy, a CIA patsy. Uh, and there were multiple Lee Harvey Oswalds, which is not uncommon. That's the way the CIA works. If they've got an asset, they will not create, but they'll find doppelgangers, gangers, bring them into the agency, and have them be in multiple places at one time, and people that they're trying to work with think they're dealing with the same guy, but it's not him. So yeah, there's a lot of just inconsistencies there. As I mentioned, there's eyewitness reports that Oswald was sitting in the break room, you know, while moments after this happened, sipping a Coke. That doesn't make sense. I mean, so yeah, there's just the cover up itself. The Warren Commission, much like the 9/11 Commission, was controlled from the beginning. It was Alan Dulles that led the Warren Commission. He's been involved in black operations with the government going way back by that time. And it's just none of it is trustworthy. None of it makes sense. In fact, so much so, this is not just my speculation. The Warren Commission was so filled with holes that it led the CIA. There was such a big uprising and a reaction from people that are like pointing out, this doesn't work. This doesn't make sense. No, this isn't right. That the CIA had to coin the phrase conspiracy theory in an attempt to discredit those seeking the truth. And then that wasn't enough. So they eventually had to host another sham investigation called the House Select Committee on Assassinations. Because remember, after that, you had the RFK assassination, the MLK assassination. You had a lot of high profile assassinations. Also, all of those were government run operations. So people were like, what's going on here? This isn't making sense. We demand answers. So they gave the House Select Committee on Assassinations. And so, yeah, it's there's just too many problems with it.
Okay. Was Malcolm X's assassination in that time frame, or was he later?
Let me look. I can't remember.
Just out of curiosity.
Let's see. He was assassinated 65. Yeah. Yeah. So right there. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
It's the 60s. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and again, obviously it's not up to you to officially prove what did happen, but with all the conflicting reports, obviously it sounds like the Warren Commission, total sham, pretty embarrassingly incompetent job at a cover up. So was Lee Harvey Oswald there? Was he firing shots? Were there multiple shooters? What
Nope.
what do you think?
He never fired a shot. He never. I mean, that's provable. It just the gun was planted. He was absolutely sort of involved, but remember, the government has a long history of doing this. The 1993 World Trade Center bombing, it came out in the court, in the court hearings afterwards, the cases, that the guy who did it was absolutely an FBI informant, and they told him to do it. They'd been leading up to it for months and months and months, but he was told it was going to be fake explosives on the day of the operation. They're getting him set up to go plant them, and he goes, "Wait a minute, these are real explosives," and they go, "Just shut up and do it anyway." So, I mean, this is what they do. So, I think Oswald absolutely was sort of a convenient, planned, intentional patsy, but he by no means was the assassin.
But there was someone shooting from the sixth floor. And then maybe also from the grassy knoll.
Definitely from the grassy knoll. I don't remember enough about the details to know it's possible. I can just tell you in general from the way they do things, they may have had someone up there, but they really didn't even have to do that. All they have to do is plant the gun there and tell the governments to tell the public someone was up there. But yeah, I would have to go back and review the data from up there. But I'm 1,000% sure Oswald never fired a shot.
Interesting. So, because I was under the impression, and again, I haven't done a ton. Like I said, this is not like my area of personal interest or expertise, but I was always under the impression that regardless of, what narrative people believe to be true, that, whether he was set up, whether he was this lone gunman, whether he was working with people, that he was, someone with training in rifles who did fire shots.
Mm-mm. Nope.
No.
Nope. I mean, he might have had training because he did a lot of operations in different parts of the country, including Russia, but he was not. He was a bumbling patsy, and he all of his activity after the shooting uh, doesn't lend itself to someone who's trying to get away with shooting somebody. So now their answer for that is, well, he knew he was a government agent. He knew he worked for the CIA, and he just assumed they would protect him. But that's not what happened. He was just going about his business, and then that's why he cried out after they arrested him, "I'm a patsy," right? Which is what you would do if you were a patsy, right? And that's on tape. We've got that on tape. By the way, another huge thing that's very seldom talked about, but you can look this up, is and this happened also with 9/11, is when they've got these narratives, of course, they prepare them and plan them in advance. They never go exactly as they plan them. It's you're pulling off a pretty major thing that involves a lot of people. Many of them are on a need to know basis and don't realize that it's a government run assassination. And so things get exposed accidentally or fall through the cracks accidentally. One of those was, I think it was either Australia or New Zealand, but somewhere in the other hemisphere over there, they were announcing an AP, an Associated Press news release that Oswald had been captured several minutes before he was captured. In fact, several minutes before anyone even knew the name Oswald or knew that he was even, anyone besides insiders knew that he was even being considered. And so obviously they got their time zones wrong. They did the same thing in 9/11 when they announced that Building 7 had collapsed, before it had collapsed. In fact, embarrassingly announcing, reading an Associated Press or some news release with it still standing, and they've announced it's already collapsed. So sometimes they jump the gun a little bit, and that happened in connection with the JFK assassination.
Okay. And now I'll admit that I'm going to try to play devil's advocate here for a second. It's going to be pretty difficult. This one just sounds like there's a little bit too many holes for me to even, pretend to really defend the official narrative. But I do want to talk about things like the eyewitness accounts of hearing multiple gunshots and the autopsy reports and things of that nature having inconsistencies. Things like Lyndon B. Johnson being sworn in. I believe another thing, I don't think you've mentioned it today, but in the past when I've heard you talk about it, you talk about the Secret Service agent driving the vehicle slows
Mm-hmm.
down when the shots first get fired, which seems fishy. Um,
Oh yeah, the
and
whole route was changed at the last minute when they got to Love Field. They announced, "Oh, we've got different, protocols. We're going to do something a little different. We're going to take a different route," and they violated just about every conceivable Secret Service protocol, the same way they did when with Trump's alleged assassination attempt during the campaign.
yeah. So there's a saying, I think it's kind of tongue in cheek based off of Occam's razor. It's called Hanlon's razor, where the saying is, why attribute to malice what can be adequately explained by incompetence or
Hmm.
stupidity? And so I don't know that I can just use that to hand wave away everything, but in terms of like the eyewitness accounts about hearing multiple shots, to me it seems feasible that, in a mass horde, a mob kind of panicking because they're hearing gunshots. If they're coming up from a high place, they're going to be echoing all over the place. There's screaming, there's running, there's fleeing, there's panic. Your adrenaline's pumping, your anxiety's pumping. we know that human memory is not like 100% reliable under normal circumstances. So it feels like later on asking people to accurately describe exactly what happened over a few seconds of mass panic and high intensity, that doesn't feel like extremely reliable testimony to me. And especially if like, you hear all these different stories, you hear all these different narratives. A lot of times people can kind of like turn their memories into what they want them to be if they don't remember something clearly. They're like, or they can be like led on to believe something they don't actually believe, where it's more interesting to think you saw someone with a gun. So you're like, oh yeah, I saw someone with a gun standing over there, even though you don't actually have a clear picture. So how much stock should we put into eyewitness accounts of those few seconds?
Well, so this is going to surprise some people, possibly, but the general narrative that you see on TV and that you hear on the news and stuff is that eyewitness testimony is historically or notoriously unreliable. That's not actually true. That's a mantra that they have created for convenience. I mean, going back to the Bible, 1,000 years before Christ, in Proverbs, it talks, and many places in the law, the Old Testament law, it talks about the mouth of two or three witnesses, and people die and are put to death based on eyewitness testimony. Can people lie? Of course. Can they misremember? Of course. Yeah, that they're not. It's not perfect. But the notion that you can just, not you, but that someone can just dismiss that whole concept of eyewitness testimony is absurd. And they do that a lot. They love to, through the media, ever since the Luciferians took over the American media and the whole Operation Mockingbird and all of that. They love to create these narratives. They did the same thing with the satanic ritual abuse scare. You read the mainstream coverage of that, and I've even seen it woven into crime dramas on TV. And they go, "Oh, it was all a big hoax. There's really no such thing as satanic ritual abuse. It's never really happened. It's all much ado about nothing." Ask the late Russ Dizdar about that, and read some of my stuff on that, chapter 13 of my volume 2 of my book. I mean, it's absolutely a big time thing and has been for thousands of years. I mean, the Luciferians love to sacrifice children. That's what the Bible says. That's what history tells us. And that's what evidence tells us. So, uh, back to JFK, if the eyewitness testimony was so evidently, unreliable and false, why did so many people associated with the JFK investigation and exposing the truth get killed? I mean, there is a trail of blood, of murders and suicides and things like that. Books have been written about it. Again, some of the books that I have whole chapters on that. It is stunning how many people over the years, over the last now 62 years, that have sought to expose the truth have died. And that's always a telltale sign. We saw the same thing with Oklahoma City bombing, with 9/11. If they can't kill you, and their favorite ways to kill people are suiciding them, sometimes called Arkansiting them, because the Clinton group, that whole mafia, they love to suicide people, like Foster in Bill Clinton's presidency. But anyway, plane crashes, overdoses, car crashes now, especially with modern cars that are easily, you can take control of them. So, yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. It's a common argument, but obviously there's much more forensic and scientific evidence than just the eyewitness accounts.
Sure, sure. Real quick though, I do want to run an experiment to see if you're a reliable eyewitness. Who was the last person that you saw in person today?
Oh, okay. Mom, your mom.
What color shirt is she wearing?
Well, you are going to get me in so much trouble.
All right, we'll move on. We'll move on.
Thank you. I'm gonna say, would you believe me if I said I know, I just don't want to tell you? Will that fly or not?
We can move on. We can move on. That's okay.
Yeah, no, I get it. No, I mean,
Yeah.
but I would say that level of detail is different from
But you would know if she had a gun.
hearing shots.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. So
And
I get it. I
yeah.
get it. And then I would also say kind of similarly with the driver slowing down. And again, there's a lot more evidence, but like with that in specifically, it does look suspicious that, a Secret Service agent who's incredibly well trained and they're some of the most disciplined people in the world, would do the wrong thing in that moment when the protocol is, obviously to get away from the scene. If he would like slow down or stop, that feels wrong. But I think that works both ways a little bit, where, if he's so disciplined, if they're so scrutinized, they're intensely vetted, their backgrounds are endlessly checked, they're heavily trusted, heavily disciplined, heavily surveilled. Is it more likely that an agent of that caliber would crack and turn on his job, his boss, and his country by being got to, or that in a moment of instinct, his flight or flight response would trigger the wrong way?
Oh, 100% you can control high level government operatives, no doubt about it. I mean, that's easy. It's much easier to control people than they think. Um, I I think because he's so well trained, I mean, the answer is in the question.
Hmm.
That's what he's paid for. You don't get to be a Secret Service agent without, incredible training. The fact that he slowed down indicates some complicity there.
Okay.
So yeah, and again, not everybody was in on it. It doesn't take everybody, but
Sure.
it's the same thing we saw with the Trump alleged assassination. And of course, the official government conspiracy theory there is that, well, they were subcontractors that were, local yokel sheriffs, and we just didn't have it with with being a campaign and so many campaign stops with different candidates and this and that, we just were shorthanded, so we subcontracted out to some local yokels who didn't know what they were doing. Well, that's a lie, So anyway, yeah, I'm not gonna concede
Yeah.
that point.
Okay. And then so I think this is the part that trips me up the most in this conspiracy specifically, but also just a lot of them. It's this idea that maybe, okay, not everyone's in on it, but a lot of people are in on it in this world. There's the people who are, running the Patsy Lee Harvey Oswald. They're the people who know where he's going to be. They're the people who are going to plant the gun. There's the real shooter or shooters. There's at least some of the Secret Service, it seems like. There's, Lyndon B. Johnson. There's the deep state. Maybe a Luciferian elite or two are in on it. The people who changed the parade route or, came up with an excuse to change it. Enough people in the CIA. Like, there's enough people in on it to me that they have this whole story set up where there's an assassin on the sixth floor and he's shooting and he's killing the president. And then later he's shot and killed. And here's the fall guy. It's Lee Harvey Oswald. But in reality, there's actually another guy on the grassy knoll for sure, and maybe somewhere else. Why not just have a Patsy do the actual shooting on the grassy knoll and have that be the official narrative and then have him killed? Like,
Well,
maybe not Lee Harvey, but somebody of his caliber.
they
Like,
couldn't.
why set up a Lee Harvey for him to not do anything, but for him to know enough that he had to get killed off?
Well, first of all, they couldn't guarantee that it would work. So they needed multiple shooters, which is the truth, uh, to do it. And the ones that did it were highly trained assassins. And by the way, if you trace the history of those that researchers have proved, they were involved in a lot of things. They were involved in the John Lennon assassination. One of them was, anyway. That's pretty amazing bit of trivia. Uh, so they just couldn't rely on it happening from but with one shooter. As far as the location, I think it's you know they needed cover for the real assassins because of eyewitnesses, and so if they can misdirect and say no, it happened up there where people aren't naturally looking, and it's not going to be as many eyewitnesses, or they can lie and say, yeah, I saw him stick his gun out the window, that kind of a thing, then it just helps them cover for the people that were on the grassy knoll. And by the way, they were experts. They were able to get packed up and get out of there very quickly. Um, but still, people saw them. And so I think it was just to provide cover, you know.
Okay. But like, I get that, even no matter how well you have it planned out, no matter how many people are in on it, no matter how confident you are that it's gonna go off without a hitch, there's no way to know that an assassination attempt will succeed, no matter how well you have it set up until it happens. So I get that you would need, a plan B, a plan C, stuff like that. But what to me that doesn't really explain like so they need multiple shooters, and very clearly there were multiple shooters or multiple like exit velocity angles, things like that. You can tell from the evidence. Why not just have two fall guys who were the actual shooters? And I know it's not your job to say why not, but like that's sort of where my mind's going.
It's classic, you know, technique. It's sort of textbook in their world, the lone wolf shooter. You see it with the school shootings. You see it with just about everything else. It's much easier to hang it on a nutcase, provide fake evidence about, them, especially these days with all their alleged social media accounts or these letters they left behind saying, I hate, JFK or whatever it might be. It's just much easier to control a narrative the fewer alleged people you've got, the fewer characters in the script, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. And then the last thing about Harvey that, for this conspiracy to go down, it confuses me is, you have the fall guy, you have the perfect person, and you're not going to let him get to testimony. He's going to have to get killed off before he can, spill the beans on what really happened. Why didn't he die sooner? Why did it take them 2 days to get it to a point where he was killed? Why did they kind of let him roam around for a couple of days before or a couple of hours before he got captured?
Well, of course, that's a detail I don't know. I'm sure it has been addressed. Obviously, people that really study this for a living, and I'm sure many in our audience are probably feeling a little bit unsatisfied with our discussion because obviously we're not intending for this to be a comprehensive treatment of the issue.
Mhm.
We're thinking of it just as a topic to expose the fact that the government lies to you. And of course, in a second here, we'll wrap it up with a spiritual application and principle.
Yeah.
But I would presume that it's not as easy to just kill somebody because, again, all the Dallas Police Department and people like that, none of them were involved in it. They think they're really capturing a guy that just killed the president. And so, you'd have to get past their security and all that, which is why Jack Ruby, who was absolutely we know from his time at the bar that he owned and the other people that he interacted with, he was in on it from the beginning. And then they killed him, by the way. He officially died of cancer.
I was going to ask that.
But yeah, no, the official story is he died of cancer in prison, but they definitely poisoned him. Yeah, I think that first opportunity, they got one of their other assets to take him out.
Okay.
So,
All right. So, some crossfires I think are more conflicting than others. I think this was more of just because again, I'm not very well versed and you are more well versed, but it's been, I think, a while for you since you've really dug into it. So I think this was just a good, more friendlier, I would say. And I don't think I can, even in good faith or bad faith, I guess I should say, come up with a way to defend the initial official narrative too heavily. It does seem like clearly something fishy happened. Clearly, there's probably more than we will ever know about the truth they're hiding. And you talked a little bit about why it matters at the beginning, but what do we do with this information? What do we do going forward with, this in mind? What are the takeaways here? What can we do now?
yeah. So the biggest takeaway goes back to our verse for the day, and that is to recognize that it's never about what it's about. There are some really evil people in this world that are working at the behest of Satan to deceive you and to convince you of a lie so that you'll willingly ultimately get on the train. What did we see in Germany in the 1930s? Oh, these are just work camps. It's going to be great. Just come on. You've got all your food's taken care of. You'll earn a living. Come on, just get to these work camps. So it's Hegelian dialectic 101. So they love to lie to accomplish their goals, and they also love to kill. Their whole depopulation agenda, their bloodlust, all of that is well documented by me and many others. So the takeaway is, first of all, you need to know the Lord Jesus as your Savior. You need to be on the right team. There's only two teams. You're either a child of wrath or Satan, or you're a child of God. And the only way to become a child of God is to be born again by faith alone in Christ alone. So ask yourself, has there been a time in your life that you've personally trusted in Jesus Christ and Him alone as the only one that can forgive your sin and give you the gift of eternal life? If not, you need to do that today. For believers that already know the Lord, you need to wake up to the reality that you are being lied to with impunity. I mean, they lie. If their lips are moving, lies are coming out of their mouth. So that is very applicable, very important for us to apply to our lives today, because there's a lot coming down the pike. We've seen a lot recently even, and not everything you see before your eyes on the state-run media is as it appears. And so it's natural to be skeptical. 1 John 4:1 says, test the spirits to see if they are of the Lord. So I think it matters both. You quoted it early on, George Santayana, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it, I think, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so, it's important to know from whence we've come, and this is a biggie. And for some people out there, we have a large audience. I bet there's a lot of people out there that have never really stopped to think much about whether this was true or not. They just accept it. If they're young, they were taught it in school history classes. If they're old enough to remember it, they just accepted the government's view. And I just think it's a good reminder. Right. By the way, our inspector, as I thought, had passed away in 2012. So just
okay.
So save people the emails.
Sure. I think that's a good place to leave it off.
Yeah. Awesome. Good discussion. There's lots of great resources out there, lots of great misinformation as well. But, check it out. And thanks for watching today, folks.
Absolutely. God bless.
God bless.
This has been the NBW Ministries podcast with Dr. J.B. Hixson. You can learn more about NBW by visiting notbyworks.org or through the free NBW Ministries app available in the App Store or Google Play Store. Thanks again for listening. And remember, it's not by works of righteousness we have done, but according to his mercy, he saved us. Titus 3, verse 5.